and we'll go ahead and get started. Tom, can you see the screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you guys so much for being here today. I know that as we get deeper into the spring, you have more and more that you need to do. And I appreciate you showing up and being willing to help each other out at these roundtables. Again, these roundtables are recorded. So if you do not wish to participate with your camera on, make sure you participate with your video turned off. Otherwise, your participation serves as consent to your picture being posted on the YouTube or any social media we post on. So welcome to April 6th, 2023 edition of the Roundtable. And we do have some breaking news. For those of you keeping up, Jordan Spieth is at 200 through 4, which is pretty respectable. If he could get to 600 today, that'd just be fantabulous. So those of you keeping up with the Masters, don't spoil it for me. We are in season 3 of our roundtables. And of course, that means Neil deGrasse says, brace yourself for knowledge is coming this way. April 6th is thought of as New Beer Day. It's New Beer's Eve because National Beer Day is celebrated on April 7th because that marks the day of the Cullen-Harrison Act that came into force and signed into law by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1933. And this led to the 18th Amendment being repealed on December 5th. That was prohibition, Mr. McClure, where you couldn't drink beer until December 5th or until March 22nd of 1933. Also, April 6th, we have some famous birthdays. We got Merle Haggard, the old convict himself, and Billy D. Williams, who most of us remember. He played Gil Sayers in Brian's Song. Billy D. Williams was just fantastic. And Paul Rudd, you remember from Anchorman, he wore the Black Panther cologne that worked 60% of the time, every time. So happy birthday, Paul Rudd. Also, April 6th was in 1896 was the day of the first modern Olympic Games in over 1,500 years that after they'd been banned by the Roman Empire. So today in 1896 is the day when we got the modern Olympics back. Also, during this week, we had the Masters tournament in 1986. Jack Nicklaus won his 6th green jacket, unprecedented, and a record that will never be matched or broken in any sport. But congratulations, Jack, on that 6th green jacket. And there he is making that putt on 17 and getting his green jacket on after the ceremony. I need some of those plaid pants. I think that really improved my look with my Skechers. So just like Jack and his son worked to win the 86 Masters, that's the way we all work together, I think, in the CTAT community, is through these roundtables. And I know I say it every time, but I really mean it. You don't know how much we appreciate the fact that you put in this time monthly to come in and help each other out. It's really meaningful and beneficial. I know it is to me because I learn something on every roundtable. We talked about the CTAT programming. Of course, nothing's really changed. If you're new on here, we do a Next Gen Administrators that's closed for this year, but we'll start with Next Gen 4 will begin in September of 2023. We hold these monthly roundtables. We'll talk about the professional conferences in a minute. And if you need a district program evaluation, we can do that. Just let us know what your programming needs are, and we're here to help. Make sure that if you haven't, you subscribe to the CTAT YouTube site. Every time we post a video on YouTube, if you subscribe, then you will get a bell notification. Also, if you're not using Connect CTAT, make sure that you do that because that is a great place to gather information, whether it be curriculum ideas, facility ideas, handbook ideas, whatever you can think of. posted on Connect CTAT Open Forum, and make sure that you use that library function too, because any attachment that's been in the Connect CTAT Open Forum, that's going to reside in the library files. Also, if you're not a subscriber to the CTE newsletter, go to the CTE homepage from the Texas Education Agency and make sure that you subscribe to that CTE newsletter that comes out from the agency. We're really looking forward to this summer's conference that is in Dallas at the Anatole on July 10th through the 13th. It's probably, it's on schedule to be our biggest conference ever. And the Anatole has plenty of room. It's got a water park. I think it's going to be a fabulous place to host the conference, and it's new. We've never been there before, so come check it out. Also, we need your presentations. Conferences are only as good as the presentations that you as the membership provide. And I can't say enough how great the presentations have been over the last 4 or 5 conferences. They've just been amazing, the best. I've been going for over 20 years, and the presentations have been the best they have ever been over these past 3 or 4 years. Just been incredible. So thank you very much. Continue to share. If you did do a presentation at the winter conference, remember, there's only about 25 people saw your presentation. So do not hesitate to repeat that same presentation at the summer conference so different folks can get an opportunity to see it. May 1st is the deadline, so you can go on to ctat.org and hit that submit button and be a presenter. Put that on your resume. We're also targeting specific teaching groups for presentations and meaningful professional development. The business teachers, we have contracted with Diana Weber, Tech Apps, and Tech Ed. We have contracted with Pam Cook, and they are providing at least 10 to 15 different individual sessions for those teachers in those areas. So as usual, the law teachers will be there, and they will have their own separate area instead of a separate conference time. That will allow your law teachers and your teacher and training teachers to not only see their breakout sessions that they do for each other, but also to see the general sessions and the TEA sessions. We think this is going to be some of the most meaningful professional development for teachers that we've ever had at the CTAT conference. We're shooting for 1,000. Let's get them signed up and encourage your teachers to present. I do want to reach out and say thank you to the folks out in El Paso. Fernando and Sergio took me to L&J's. I think that's the name of the restaurant. And I learned what I think it's I already got the name, forgot the name of it, but I think it was Molina. But anyway, it is pretty darn good sauce. I found out you're supposed to eat it on chicken, and if you put it on salad, they make fun of you. So if you eat it, put it on chicken. But the folks out in El Paso were just terrific. That is a beautiful town and a beautiful area. And they attended the CTAT TASBO training, and they were a great group. And we appreciate everyone that attended one of those trainings. And sometime around June, we'll put out the schedule for next year. We're going to try to move it around to some different areas. Also, Salina ISD, Salina CTE is hosting their rodeo for their welding rodeo. And Ryan, are you on here, buddy? Ryan Contreras? He was there a minute ago. Ryan Contreras from Salina. Well, if Ryan hops back on, then what we'll do is when we finish up with the overview, we'll let Ryan's going to get, he's got a phone out there, and he's going to show us a 360 view of the Salina welding rodeo. So we appreciate Ryan sharing with that. As far as from the leadership committee, if Sherry or PT1's on here, if you'd like to share any updates from the leadership committee.
Hi, Mark. Yes, so our leadership committee, the last time we've met, and we may have actually reported it on this, so I apologize, we didn't have one in March. So our February meeting really focused on IBC's the regional visits for updating program of study, where TEA wants to get into the few regions around the state and get the feedback on the program of study. And they want to stress that they say they are not removing classes or programs. It's really to see what needs to be updated or improved. And then quite a bit of interest in trying to recruit teachers for the TEACS reviews and getting people on those committees, just so we've got a good turnout for everything. So that's been the most of what's going on. Most of that you probably have heard from your service center already. And so that's what we have from there. And if PT has anything, but he might have already had to leave for his other meeting.
Well, thank you, Sherry, so much for sharing that with the group. And I know that the service centers have been sending out that listening tour information in their newsletters. And also we send it out in the CTAT chat, and we have information on it later on in the presentation here. Thanks, Sherry, so much. All right, moving right along. So we've talked about this on the past two roundtables, but military data is going to start to be collected again. And what you do is you have to start developing a procedure to collect those DD Form 4 enlistment documents from the armed forces. And so that usually will have to come from a student. So what I encourage you to do, instead of spending a lot of time on this, is start developing your procedures for collecting those DD Form 4 forms now. We talked about the sunsetting IBCs, and we also talked about the fact that the proposed requirements for CCMR credit have been moved for 1 year. So the 2024 graduates will have to have a class with an aligned program of study. The 2023 graduates are as is. And of course, that just keeps on moving. Every requirement moves down 1 year. 2025 has to be a concentrator, and 2026 has to be a completer. Also, you've gotten information a couple of different times about the programs of study refresh, and that's what Sherry was talking about. The TEACS works group, of course, that was in the CTAT chat. So if you want to apply to be on one of the TEACS works groups, that's available to you. They're also working on the new occupational safety and health TEACS draft for the OSHA course. And this is specifically to what Sherry was speaking about. TEA is going around and they're having a listening tour, and you can find that information on the TEA website. You can find it from your service center, or you can go to the CTAT chat and click there, and you can have all the dates and locations and register. And yeah, thank you, Lisa. Lisa said that the DD Form 4 will be submitted next spring for the 2023 graduates. And students can earn those through December 31st. But so start developing your procedures for collecting those forms now, or you won't have anything to enter. There's going to be 6 in-person events for the listening tour: Austin, Houston, Dallas, Abilene, El Paso, and Edinburgh, as well as 2 virtual opportunities. So I highly recommend that if you can get to one of those places in person, do it, because there's stuff that you're going to hear in person that they just you won't get the feel for it on the Zoom. So make sure that you go click on there and register for the date and location. I've already done it. I can't wait for the listening tours to start. Okay, so I've talked to Miss Hatton and Mark Parkerson and Lisa Harrison. There's a lot of discussion going on around the state now about what is a minute as it relates to CTE and the funding allotment. And so all this discussion and about what is amendment made me think of you really got to go to ex-President Bill Clinton. And what is a minute? Well, it depends on what your definition of is. And so it's very confusing in a way, and in other ways it's not. Several weeks ago, we hosted on CTAT Zoom, we hosted the 4-day school week and its impact on CTE programs, and that's posted on YouTube right now. And we had a huge turnout, and we covered a lot of this information. Back in days of yore, there were 7 55-minute periods per day. Every school did the same thing. Every school had 55-minute periods, 7 periods a day. Every school started after September 1st and ended before June 1st. It was universal. We even did that in Grandview. And then the block schedule came sometime during the mid-90s. And schools starting before September 1st, ending after June 1st. Some schools went from 55-minute periods to 8 90-minute periods over a 2-day period. And so then in that case, then you really got into what was the minimum of 45 minutes per day, because when you divide 90 minutes by 2, you get 45 minutes per day. And of course, when you look in the student attendance accounting handbook, it's clear that 45 minutes a day is the bare minimum that you can have for a V1 student. And 45 minutes a day is set up to last over 180 instructional days, which is what it was for years and years. Well, the problem is, well, you can see here, 45 minutes times 180 instructional days equals 8,100 minutes, which is a V1 or 1/6 of a contact hour, however you want to say it. And we know that it takes 6 V1 students to make 1 contact hour. And so you get 6 contact hours times 180 days, you get 1,080, which makes 1 FTE or 1 full-time equivalent. And that math has been true for at least 30 years. Well, so then the 4-day weekend came in and they started with the waiver calculation. So in the waiver calculation, it required 8,000 minutes and it was due in September of 22, and they have extended that into the spring subsequently, but that waiver only applies to the 22-23 school year. There will not be waivers in the future, is what we are being told at this time. So here were the predictions and proposals, and we had to go to the Tony Romo action figure. So the numbers and days in the language will change. And you can see that the number of days per week. So a V1 student in the future could very likely be 8,100 minutes. A V2 student would be then 16,200 minutes. And a V3 student would be 24,300 minutes. And so that 45 minutes, though, will remain the minimum number of minutes that can be held in a class. So if you take and use some higher level thinking skills, you can take the minutes required and divide by days. And so 180 days would be 45 minutes. 144 days, which is common to 4-day weeks, would be 57 minutes. Even if you went to a 3-day week, 108 days, it would be 75 minutes, and so on and so forth. However it is, you get your 8,100 days as the law exists now. So what's come out from, and Marcette has sent this out, and I know that the Service Center folks have been briefed on it. So make sure that you reach out to your Service Center folks to get complete information. But here's the gist. If your district has a professional development waiver, then that's 225 minutes that you can subtract from the 8,100. And they come up with that 225 minutes because that's about 5 days if you do the math. So you can subtract that 225 minutes from 8,100 and you come up with 7,875. Then you take the 7,875 minutes, divide by instructional days, and you get the minutes required as your district. So let's say that your district is on 172 days and you have the instructional waiver. Well, you would take 7,875 and divide that by 172, and you would come up with 45 minutes, 45.78 minutes, or 46 minutes a day. Now, this is easy enough and easy enough to do, but the problem is that most districts, as you know, already have their schedule set for next year. They have their bus routes. So any change in this doesn't just fluster the career tech class that the kid is sitting in, it disrupts the entire school. Even the elementaries are disrupted because you have to coordinate the bus routes. So information is getting out as soon as possible, but as I'm sure many of you have heard, that this in order for this to go into the student attendance accounting handbook, it has to be approved by the State Board of Education. And so all we really have right now is just proposed language from the agency. It hasn't even been proposed to the state board yet. And so when the state board puts that on their agenda, then it will have to go out for public comment. So you're looking at August or September for it would actually be enacted. And so, but I would sure act on what would be in the first reading, but we don't have a first reading yet. So when folks ask me what I would do is I think I would just sit tight and wait till the legislative session was over and make sure that your superintendent and all the stakeholders, your transportation people, make sure everyone is in the know that this is a possibility. And you might have a plan in your back pocket should this come to fruition, but I sure wouldn't make any hasty actions right now. Okay,
Hey,
let's
Mark,
move in.
Mark,
Yes.
while we're on that topic,
Yes,
and
sir.
I got a text and it's right, we may want to turn off the recording. The challenge that a lot of us have is the language that was put in. The 8,100 minutes a year isn't a challenge. The
you-
challenge that we're running into is our breakdown. I'm looking at our calendar for next year that's already been approved by our board a long time ago. We have 80 instructional days in the first semester and 92 instructional days in the second semester. And in order to what they tried to put in it, and maybe they pulled it back out, was that means a one semester class has to have half of those 8,100 minutes, which is 4,050.
Right.
Right. That's never been identified before in writing.
No,
And
because
so-
it's always gone over a 2-week period instead of a yearly period.
Right. And so now what we're doing is we're taking, like, we have 80 days. And so if we have 80 days of school with student attendance, that's where districts are having a challenge right now with it. It isn't the 8,100 minutes that I think any of us are concerned about. We're all going to meet that and exceed that. It's that first semester where we start school early August, but we end the first semester before Christmas. Now we're short. Second semester, we're way over. But first semester we're short. So if I have a kid sitting in a virtual business class, first semester, that student is, based on our calendar right now, going to be right around 3,920 minutes. Now, if I get to use those 225 days from the professional development waiver, which we front load professional development, if those 225 minutes all get to be applied to the first semester, I'm golden. If they don't, then I'm going to have a problem. And I'll shut up here in a second. The next question is, at what point is TEA going to understand that when we put something into place, it needs to happen the following year, so that calendars that are already done, districts don't have to go back and make changes because the state decided something. Instead, we can forward plan. It's backwards design. You can't backwards design if you don't know the rules until after the school year starts.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And I would encourage you about the 40-50. And we talked about that in the Slack before we started recording, is that, actually we talked about during the area presidents meeting, I'm sorry, but yeah, the schools need those extra days in the spring. Most of them will put extra days in the spring because of all the testing and stuff that's done in the spring. And so that eats away the instructional time. And it's just, I can remember maybe 1 or 2 years when we have gone past Christmas with the first semester, but out of 31 years, probably 29 of those is the first semester ends before Christmas. And so I hear what you're saying, and we need to make those concerns. Right now, we need to make those concerns evident to the agency, because the agency is recommending language to the state board. But once the state board has it, we need to make sure those concerns need to be addressed in writing to the state board. You cannot overdo providing information to the state board, because they do use that information. Sammy's topped on here, Rick, and he said that he's seen at least one district adjust their calendar so that the first semester ends after Christmas break. Maybe it was something like that. Yeah, Sammy, good point. Good point. All right, so we're just halfway started with the fun. Legislative update. Okay, so let's talk about House Bill 100. When House Bill 100 came out, well, we thought it was just really a simple bill that would add teacher pay increase to the state base, which is not a biggie for most districts, and it would expand the teacher incentive allotment. And then the special programs would go from an average daily attendance to the average enrollment. And so everything sounds fine, and everyone loves all of that. But then this peaked out at the very last day on the very bottom of the bill. And so as you can see here, this is on page 23, 22 and 23 of the original bill. You can see that it strikes this relates to career and technical education allotment. It strikes the term full-time equivalent and replaces it with average enrollment. But as you know, there's no way to career tech is the only curriculum area that offers 2 and 3 block courses, 2 and 3 credit, 2 and 3 hour courses, however you want to say it. So there's no way to compensate or to equalize that time that is spent in a full-time equivalent of the teacher's time without full-time equivalent. You have to have a formula for full-time equivalent to equalize out 2 students in an intro to business class, or 40 students in an intro to business class versus 20 students in a double block welding class. Right now, they're the same because of the full-time equivalent formula. Let me say that one more time clearly. 40 students in an intro to business, 1 credit, 1 hour class is the same as 20 students in a double block welding class. 40 students intro to business is the same in the funding formula now as 20 students in a double block class. So you have to have that full-time equivalent formula because that takes into account that allots for the teacher's time in front of students, which is contact time, contact hours. So taking that full-time equivalent formula out would be devastating. Then they came in and they struck the multipliers for the program of study level courses and left that blank. And Robin got on the phone and has reached out, and Marty and MJ have been working around the clock in Austin, and Robin reached out to her contacts at Tasbo and Moat Casey, and we found out that possibly the intent is to go from 1.1 to 0.1, and 1.28 to 0.28, and 1.47 to 0.47, and leave the full-time equivalent language up there. Well, the problem with that is it doesn't, if they do that, that doesn't account for the direct and indirect allotment, which was not addressed in House Bill 100. And so when you account for direct and indirect allotment, then you come up with something like this. This would be the difference if you go from 1.28 to 0.28 in a 1 hour course, your direct student loss would be $436. So it's a brutal undertaking. And so it's not time. They have a committee sub that we haven't seen yet that may affix the bill. And also we're working with the staff for Representative King and the representative from that's in Killeen, that's chairman of the House Public Ed Committee, and his staff, Mr. Reed. We're working to get those. So it is not time to pull out the pitchforks and the torches and go chasing Frankenstein yet, but we sure need to be on high alert because if we do that, and if it comes to that, then we will have a special Zoom and we'll send out special emails and keep you apprised of what's happening with House Bill 100. But we sure wanted you to be in the know and for House Bill 100 to be on your radar. All right. Any questions? Any comments? We're in open, it's open mic time.
Hey, Mark, this is Dave.
Yes, sir.
Hey, can you explain that? You're talking about the 40-50 deal with the minute rule. Can you explain that a little more about the 2 semesters?
Yeah.
Fall and spring semester?
So if you take 8,100 minutes, which is if you take 45 minutes and multiply that by 8,100,
Mhm.
wait, you take 45 minutes and multiply that by 180 instructional days, then you get 8,100 minutes per year.
Right.
And so that's how you get basically 1/6 of an FTE. That's one student going through a 1-hour course. Okay, so if you take in, they were asking about a semester course. If you cut that in half, then a semester course would be 4,050 minutes per semester. Well, that assumes that you have 90 days in the fall and 90 days in the
I
spring.
got you.
But nobody has 90 days in the fall, and 90 days in the spring. They're going to have 80 and 100 or 82 and 90.
Right.
You know, it's never proportionate. The spring is always longer.
So they're saying that you should have that 4,050 minutes in the fall?
Yeah, that is what draft language is saying right now. And by draft language, I mean, what? If you call Marcette, she'll share it to you, and I can certainly shoot you that email that she sent me, but that's just draft language, and it says it's nothing definitive. You know, we don't even have a draft to look at in official form. We just got
And you're talking about for the student accounting handbook?
for the student accounting handbook.
I
That's
got you.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, when that gets actually proposed and it turns into real draft language, then it go before the State Board of Education. And then whatever that draft language ends up looking like when it gets proposed for the SAL, then that's when you can put in public comment to the State Board.
Okay.
But I encourage everyone, if you have situations like what Rick was talking about, share that with the agency, because you know, if you're not sitting there working day to day with school problems, then you don't necessarily think about all the issues that come up specifically in a district.
Well, I misunderstood. He was talking like it was already in effect. I was like, oh, Lord.
Now it's you know, I'd say likelihood 70% if I had to put a percentage on it, but
Yeah.
it's far from 100.
Do you in any way feel like they just threw this out there and didn't even really think about the effects or ask anybody? And I mean,
Are
I
you
think a lot
talking?
of us are gonna have a problem.
Are you talking about the minutes or House Bill 100
Yes,
funding?
this breaking it down by semester.
No, I think it came from the 8,100 minutes came from the what's in the student accounting handbook now, 45 minutes times 180. And then everyone started having the 4-day week. So you had to come up with a way to compensate for the amount of time that you need to be in a career tech course, the amount of time needed to be in contact with a CTE instructor and a student to compensate and get your full allotment of funding. So when you start coming away with that, well, then you start having to look for fixes to come up with schedules that meet 148-day, 152-day schedules, you know, because a 4-day week is not a 4-day week, is not a 4-day week. You know, all those 4-day week districts will have a different number of days they meet. And so I think they were trying to fix a problem for a 4-day week, and it stirred up a whole lot. Susie, years ago, and I know you remember this, that the school districts went from mandating 180 days of instructional days to minutes. Well, when they did that years ago, career tech never changed. It didn't change from days to minutes. It just stayed days. And so it's a little bit behind what every other program functions as.
And I don't really think the minutes are even the issue. I don't think they ever thought about, we don't have the same number of days in the fall and the spring.
Well, they don't think about that because that's going to be different for every district. That's a district decision. And so it's not something that, unless they mandate the number of days that each semester has to have, it's going to remain a district decision. And so I don't know what they're going to do about the 40-50.
It's just, that, when you say you have to have the same number of days, a lot of times that means the finals for the fall semester end up having to be after Christmas, which is really not a good idea. You take a 2-week break and then come back and take a final.
It's horrible. Like I said, over my 31 years, we did that maybe twice, and it was horrible both times.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so it's a bad, and plus all that testing that's done in the spring. Lisa, I see you on there. The Service Center folks are meeting next week in Austin, and maybe by the time they leave, they'll have some better information. Miss Yancey, you have a question?
Yes, good afternoon. How's everyone doing?
Hey, thank you for raising your hand. How polite was that?
I was in school. No. Thank you for helping me earlier last week. In regards to, I was searching for the TEA recommended A through F certification entity for the emergency telecommunication. TEA only recognizes one entity, that's the IAED, which is the International Academy of Emergency Dispatch. And they're out of Salt Lake City, Utah. And it was really hard to get in touch with them, but finally I did reach through Region 10. Julie Anderson helped me get information to contact them. It's just that their prices are almost triple than the previous entity that we formerly were used, NECI 911. But I guess I
Now,
just have to move forward if that's an A through F certification that's recommended.
when you say their prices are tripled, is that for the test or for the material?
This is all online instruction. It's $299 per student. That's the training and the exam.
Well, if that's the exam cost, then of course you can get reimbursed
Right.
if they
That's true.
pass. Yeah.
That's true. Just the previous company we worked with, NECI, it was $125. But at least I have the information. One main thing I wanted to talk to you in addition to about was the newsletter for TEA that went out March 13th. A lot of our administrators were kind of confused about what does this mean about the non-commissioned security officer level 2 certification. I was not surprised, but they basically made a statement here that says students can earn, they have multiple steps in completing the certification for the non-commissioned security officer. This is under the Law and Public Service Law Enforcement Program of Study. And in addition to that, they're stating that the students have to pass the certification, which we know, then apply for their license through the top and submit fingerprints to earn the certification. Now that part was very unclear, and I called Dale Fowler with TEA, and he basically said he didn't put that out. But the information is misleading because now our administration think, in other districts as well, think that students have to go get their fingerprints done and turn it into TCOIL to the state to complete their certification process. And that's curious to me because when I talked to the vendor, the level 3 entity that certifies our students, they basically said, in order for a kid to get the full license, first they go through the training and get the certification, to get the exam, get the certification. Only if they're 18 and have an actual employment opportunity can they take that to TCOIL and then request their full license.
Yes, that's right. And I'm
Right.
surprised he said that was unclear because he put that out a couple different times, and one time it came out, it's in the frequently asked questions too. And one of the things, and I'm sorry because I don't know if this works 100%, but a suggestion that I've been giving is what you might do is ask your district if they would put them on as adjunct or student security and let them basically employ the students for a day or a week to where they can actually file and get their fingerprints done.
Well, that's an interesting fact because they have to pay additional $62 for that application with T-Coil. And then that employer has to keep them on record on their files for so many number of years, 2 to 5 years, as an employee and stating that they work there with a license. So I have an employer that basically said they couldn't take that hit as far as we certified in Dallas ISD 167 students, and not all of them are 18. TA has this course in alignment with law enforcement 2, which is a level 3 course. These kids are going to be 16, 17. They're not ready to go to T-Coil and pay $62 to go to the state to get a license, let alone have an employer. So my point is that newsletter was kind of misleading. Today I talked with a district that actually hit the panic button, and they went through their HR department and fingerprinted all their students that just finished the certification. But the next step is they don't know what to do with the fingerprints because there's no hiring entity to give to T-Coil and say, hey, let's put this together. T-Coil is not going to take the fingerprints because they're relying on the employer to manage that information on their new employee, the non-commissioned officer or private security. So anyway, does anyone else have any concerns about that?
Am I right, though? Until they get that full license, it's only passed and not earned, and we don't get a point unless it's earned. Is that right?
That's correct.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's been a huge topic all year long because there was training like at summer conference, and when our teacher went, she met somebody, that person kept telling our teacher the same way. They can't really get the TCOL certificate until they're employed somewhere. But DEA just keeps putting that out, which basically pulls it off our list. I mean, I know in our CTAT chat, there have been districts who have talked about getting their students fingerprinted and having done it, but I can't remember who they are right off the top of my head.
There are two different things, a certification and then there's a license. Meeting the requirements for the certification is the training and then the certification. Getting the license is another step that should be beyond it's high school, because they're going to have to be 18 or older and go work full time somewhere. So that's
Well-
why I'm saying it's misleading. And when I talk with my vendor that certifies our students, that actually hires the certified applicants, they cannot be an affiliate. And that was another comment that was made in the newsletter. Affiliate means someone not associated with an employer. If you try to go online, because I went to the training myself and I said, okay, let me see if I can be an affiliate. It stops you at that level and says, if you do not have an employer, you cannot apply for an affiliate license, because you have to be connected with the employer, which does the fingerprinting and documents it for the state and maintains those records for the recommended period of time. So anyway, I'm just saying there's a difference in certification and license.
Yeah, for sure, Miss Yancey. We sure appreciate you bringing that to our attention. And I'm glad Renee said that about, we've talked about that 5 times on the roundtable. It's come up so many times. And it seems like we've had 5 different sets of guidance come out. It's a tough way to get a point. It's easier to take dual credit chemistry.
You know, that's the downside of all of this in our district. All of a sudden, where it was, let's get every kid a certification no matter what, you know, even if it's not connected, let's do it. That attention has been pulled away now, and the attention has switched back to dual credit again to really push that whole focus where we were like trying, you know, and had the principal and counselor support of let's get them through the program of study. Let's get this all done for the CCMR point. That emphasis has now gone away and just shifted all the way back to just dual credit. Let's get them in and, you know, English 1301. We get our point and move on. And we're just losing that. I mean, the teachers were, were felt like it was such a priority, and the counselors were really putting the emphasis on keeping the kids in the programs of study to get it. And we've lost it. Everything now, all of our conversations really deal with the college readiness, college bridge, because they feel like that's just a lot more sure. And what may happen if a kid, gets a certification somewhere within 4 years is not something they can depend on, since most of them are senior level certifications.
It's funny you said that, because we were having a conversation the other day, and they make it so convoluted that people just quit caring about it. And especially, when they're increasing the standard that you have to be to get an A. Well, if the goal becomes impossible, well, people just give up on the goal.
Can I say one more thing, not to beat this into the ground?
Please
But
do. Thank you.
The non-commissioned security officer on the TEA actual A through F list, it does state for certification, any level 3 authorized entity of TCOL. That right there should let you know that that's where the certification can be earned. Through the level 3 certified entity that is endorsed by TCOL.
Miss Yancy, I think you're preaching to the choir.
Question is, what do we do? How do we get it changed to certification instead of licensure? That's the first time I've heard him say these are two separate things. So maybe, is there a way that could be addressed kind of separately, or I just not heard it said that way before?
Well, I think that the agency makes that decision, and so somebody help me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that which level is earned. So really, you do and get into what is the definition of earned, and so at what point, does the kid have to show up at a bank and with a nightstick and walk around to prove you get what I'm saying? I mean, there's so many points, after they pass the test and applied to TOPS and all that. Well, in my mind, that's earning the certification when they get it back. But in order to get the actual license from the state, well, they have to have an employer, and that's very similar to a educational aid.
Yes.
Except
I was
school
just thinking
districts.
the same thing.
Yeah, school districts can wire around that because they can do the educational aid ones in the house.
Well, they changed the law so that aides don't have to be employed if they've done the coursework.
Right.
And in fact, they revised the law again this year to add in a couple of extra courses to count in the pathway, because it did say education and training pathway, but program of study, but it included some human services classes. So they went back and added that verbiage this time.
And that's where I had the ideal. And again, not having gone through all the steps, I would think if the school, and I'm glad, of course, Miss Yancey in Dallas is going to have a lot bigger, it's just a problem multiplied by how many did you say you had certified, Miss Yancey?
167, and this is our 3rd year.
Yeah, 167, that's going to be, and getting anything through Dallas ISD is probably a lot harder. Whereas Mr. McClure, I see him sitting right there, if he's got 20 that's coming out of his law enforcement, getting it through Cleveland ISD might be a little bit easier paperwork task. So but it should be the same for everybody, fair for everybody. So. Thank you, Miss Yancey, for bringing that up.
Thank you. I'm glad to know that everyone kind of understands the same thing. I just wish those people who put out this documentation can have more clarity. I'll just put it that way.
And I don't think Dale was doing anything nefarious.
Dale said he didn't put that out.
Oh, well, where'd it come from then?
He didn't say, but whoever handles the newsletters,
Yeah.
I think they generalized it so general that people now think this is the priority to go to TCOL to finish the certification. The TCOL is the license for, because our kids are not 18 yet. They can't go get the license, so it's not a done deal. The list itself tells you the entities that TCOL has approved that the level 3 instructor can issue a certification which meets the requirement for TEA.
Yeah. It's always, you just go back to chasing the tail, don't you? Anything else? We sure appreciate that's been a good topic and a confusing topic all year long.
Hey, Mark, are
Yes,
there
ma'am.
are there any updates on that flight plans, or is that done? I don't know.
That is, and I saw Tally Joe on here, but flight plan is probably going to go through and be a done deal at the next SBOE meeting,
April 15th.
April 15th.
April 15th. All right. Thank you.
I was gonna double check that agenda real quick.
Yeah, it was on there. I just forgot the date.
I rephrase that, April 11th. They're moved up a little bit, 14th. 11th through the 14th.
And that'll be effective August of 2023.
Mhm.
August 1, I think, is what it said. Well, you guys keep a close eye on House Bill 100, and we may have to have a couple more special legislative Zooms here if things move funny. Anyone have anything else? Robin, are we missing something?
Hey,
You know,
Marcus,
after the marathon of calls we had this morning, I hope
Oh,
we-
good.
we
It
covered it.
Since Monday, our life has been House Bill 100. And so it's funny that something like that can just be so consuming. But when I hang up the Zoom, I'm going back to a document that I'm working on House Bill 100. So it's yes, yeah, David, I'm sorry.
oh, that's all right. What about our famous vocational pathway? What happened to that?
Well, it's been changed a couple different times, and I haven't seen a sub for that bill yet. Robin may have, but as far as I know, it hasn't even gotten a hearing yet. So if it gets a hearing, we'll send it out. And you know, that's kind of the big deal. It's not doing anything without a hearing. So I think David, Representative Gates has a good intention, and I think if we could get with him, you know, maybe starting in August and work with him for the next legislative session, we could come up with a good idea on something like an apprenticeship, you know, something that would be meaningful for those students that he's wanting to target. But it's just so, I don't even know how, it's just kind of chaotic is what that bill is right now.
What about was it the House today voting on the voucher, anti-voucher bill?
Oh, Robin might be on the know on that.
That
Do
go
you know,
through?
Robin?
No, today is budget.
And that
House
was
Bill
part of the
1.
that was part of the buzz. Was it Senate Bill or House Bill 1? Was it?
House Bill 1, I thought was today, maybe not.
Yeah,
That
they're
was it,
debating HB1 today.
It was in House Bill 1, wasn't it, saying they can't use public funds for private tuition? Anyway,
I don't know.
I just wondered if anybody heard. I didn't watch it today.
But now that you said that, I'm gonna go back and look at it and see what it says.
That was the anti-voucher bill.
It's funny, as long as I've been an adult, they've talked about having vouchers down there, and it never happens. Something always blocks it. And that's why I thought it was so funny that the governor came out so adamant for it.
Yeah, according the Facebook post on it, the Texans for Texas Association of School Boards shared, they said they were voting on it today, Thursday.
And it said House Bill 1, or specifically that voucher part,
The
Renee.
voucher part. The whole voucher part is there. The Texas Association of School Boards put it on Facebook and had a place where you could automatically email your representative.
I'm gonna have to link that to my MySpace page so I'll get those notifications.
You just wake up at 2 a.m. every night and spend some time scrolling or trolling and you
I
find
told-
things.
I told them the other day, when you see me on Facebook, start collecting canned goods because the end is near. Okay, well, hey, thanks everyone. And I really do mean this. It's so meaningful that you guys are willing to come on here and share. And I'm going to stop the recording. We're right at an hour, and that makes for a good YouTube video. Thank you guys so much, and keep alert, and we'll stay open for some slack at the end. Thanks a lot. See you next month.